Hi, it's Mars Puyan from GBC Live. Today we have Shilpi Biswas as a Vice President of American Chamber of Commerce in China, in Shanghai. She is, as a mother, as a businesswoman, as an entrepreneur, as a great, an outstanding person who is taking care of her family, her work, and all these things together, that she's here today with us, and we want to talk about work-life integration. So before we get to the talk, I want her to have a kind of brief introduction of herself, which can give a kind of brief introduction to what she has done and for her background to all the viewers, to you all outstanding people who are watching us and who are supporting us. So Shilpi, thank you so much for being here with us, and we know that you're super busy. You have a lot of things that are coming up.
Nothing as important as talking to you, Mars. This is the most important segment now.
Thank you so much. So, we would love to know about your background, what you have done.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm Shilpi. Thank you for taking me on your show. And this is great. This is a great guy. Met you at a very interesting event.
Thank you so much.
And so, what am I? I am a mother. That's the most important role. I've elected to have children. So I'm a mother. I'm a daughter.
Yeah.
I'm a professional. I have people who work for me, and I have people I work for. I have customers. I develop membership. I'm a professional. So I'm many different things, and I wear many important hats.
Awesome.
And very non-important hats. Like my kids think, I am the most blasé, passed out person, but that doesn't matter. But that's what being a mom is. And I'm excited to be here today because I know you're creating an important platform, an important connectivity and learning tool. And hopefully I can add on to it a little bit.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That would be beautiful. What about your professional background? You want to know about your professional background?
Sure. So I have an Indian background. So like every good Indian person, I am a computer science graduate. I'm shaking my head. Naughty. Not naughty, naughty. So I do have a graduate in computer science, like any good Indian person should.
Awesome. Coders. India.
I have a graduate degree from the U.S. and then I worked for big corporates, automotive industry for 10 years,
wow, awesome.
Telecom for another 7-8 years, and big industrials. I was with GE for about 5-6 years.
Wow.
A lot of international travel. I grew up in India, spent time in the U.S., traveled and worked in Japan and Mexico, Africa, and now China. So blessed.
Wow, this is a awesome and perfect background. You're a person, international person. You're an interdisciplinary person. I think the great things that you are is a great mom as well. She's a great mom as well, has 2 kids, yeah?
That's right.
2 beautiful kids, yeah.
That's right.
That's 2 children. So, like son and daughter that you have there.
Yeah, I got a son who's going to be 11. They grow fast, and I have a daughter who just turned 12.
Awesome. So the reason that I'm just really curious that she's as a mom, because the topic that we have is all about work-life integration. So work-life integration that we want to talk about, that it's a kind of things that it's all about balance in life. How is it? To try to have a balance between work and try to have a balance between your personal life and with your family and friends. Is it?
Yeah. It's very interesting. And one of the things I think we didn't mention is that I'm also an entrepreneur. I actually have a couple of conceptual businesses, and they are in the mind wellness tech space, so it's very much in its conceptual form.
Really perfect.
So I really do understand your audience a little bit, who you are trying to reach out. There's male, of course, female, and then females who are also working, who are mothers, who are trying to start their businesses and trying to scale their businesses. So there's a lot of things happening.
Right.
So now you go back to the question of balance, which is a very, very important topic, and it's been talked to death. You open up internet, you open up books, there is channels, there's wisdom coaches. So balance is a very important word, I would say, but I try and take balance out of the equation. Because the moment you talk about balance, there's this very utopian thought process which people have, that everything has to be in harmony, everything has to be in perfect proportions. But what I have found through my life and through the changes I have made, that there is no balance. It's an integration. And work doesn't stop because your personal life starts, and your personal life doesn't and because you have to go to work. It is all kind of like a multitude of things which are integrated like a jigsaw puzzle. So I really prefer to call it integration versus balance.
Integration versus balance. Because anytime that we are talking about balance, we are talking about harmony between them. And then integration again is like, or versus balance. It's, for me, it's so interesting. It's the first time that somebody is talking about, it's not about balance, it's all about integration and so on. So that's really cool. How it is, how I think the integration, how it has to happen in every single person's life, you know.
Yeah, so it's there's no clear-cut formula, right? Like if there was a clear-cut formula, then we would all be successful. We would read a book, we would know Y plus Z makes X, and we would just follow it. But I think we could just look at the wisdom of some people who managed to do it all. And in that way, I certainly don't think I do it all. I'm far from doing it all, and I'm very, very far from perfect. But I do know the way I integrate myself is that, if I come to work and my children are at school and say I have a widowed mom who lives in a different country who may need help, and I may have a friend who's having a bad day, I just can't leave it all and just be working 10 hours, which I do, and I do work 12 hours. But hey, look, if a phone call comes and I have to get out of there, excuse myself and get out of there. If I have to get my child into work and say, hey, you're going to go sit in the conference room for a few minutes just because I have peace of mind, I let that happen. And another very important formula, which a lot of, I know parents sometimes cannot give it up, say their child is sick and they have to come into work. They're going to continue to think about the child and worry about it and be anxious. And what happens then? You cannot produce at work. What I say is try and give up the anxiety. You can't help it. You're at work anyways. Figure out what you're going to do. Don't work the 8 hours, work the 4 hours and go back and then be with your child versus taking the anxiety with you all the while. So that's what I call integration.
So you're saying that every single person, I mean, especially women, which they are much more responsible for their children and so on. You're saying that they are supposed to giving up some, other things to have a better integration with their work as well. Yeah. So giving up is something. Is it about that? Well, I think using the word of satisfaction is heavy, but the giving up what? I mean, if you as a woman entrepreneur, as a woman business person that you are in your organization, what kind of things you're giving up?
Yeah. I think one of the kind of like when we had this pre-talk, we talked about, the use of words. And I strongly believe the type of verbiage you use, it again creates a visualization of expectation of yourself.
Yeah.
And also the words you use kind of creates an expectation of what someone else is expecting from you.
Yeah.
And you very well know as an entrepreneur, as a startup guru, that you use your words wisely because your investors and customers expect that out of you.
Exactly.
And I don't think that should be any different from us personally as we are leading and integrating our work and life together. Use our words perfectly. For example, if I say, I have sacrificed my TV time to go do a conference call, at that time I'm going to have an instability and a kind of an anger towards my work because I gave up some time with my family or my kids or my entertainment to go do work. Or vice versa, to say that, I gave up this fantastic meeting with an investor who could have given me $10 million because I had to go to a PTA conference. That's horrible. So when we use that word sacrifice, it kind of like gives this very heavy feeling. So at that point, I kind of use a lighter word like giving up. Then I think your question was, what is it I give up to integrate some kind of a harmony in a busy life, because at the end of the day, we all have 24 hours, right?
Exactly.
And especially, say, as an entrepreneur, as a woman, and it's really no difference between a male and a woman. We all have the same pressures. But as a woman, say you decide to have a family, you also have in-laws, you have, family and parents and all of these different things going on. Sometimes you gotta kind of take something out of your equation, and that could be, having to give up a bit of a girlfriend time or having to give up a little workout time or something. You have to give up something because then that's how you rationalize and integrate things together. If you want everything together, I think time becomes very short. And sometimes you give up on your sleep time. I've done that, and is that okay? Maybe it is at that time.
Is it something that it depends on your choices? Because I choose, let's say, as an entrepreneur, I choose working like 16 hours or 17 hours in a day.
Yeah.
This is my choice, yeah? Is it because of the choice that you have? And imagine, for example, if I'm a father, which I'm not now, well, I have, let's say, my kids. I choose to spend more time on my kids. I choose to spend time on my work. Mm-hmm. This is all about choices, yes? How do you define in that? Because I see that giving up is all about making decision and your choice and your selection that you pick or you choose to focus more on this part of your life.
I think that's a great segment. That's a great segment that you use the word choice, because I truly believe that we are extremely blessed. All of us, at least I know you and me, I'm sure a lot of our audiences too, are extremely blessed because we are truly at a choice that, none of us is going hungry for what we've decided to do.
Exactly.
And none of us have to leave our children under a tree to go field. And I've seen that in some of the rural places in India, China. I've been blessed to be in Africa, and I've seen that people really, and there's a lot of immigrants who come in who have nothing, and they have to give up a lot of their basic necessities, and that is when there is no choice. Mm-hmm. Today we make a choice to either have a career, to have a family, to have a social life, to have a lot of other things, and that's choice. And using the word choice equates to empowerment. Mm-hmm. The moment someone gets bogged down by saying, you know what, I don't know how to go any further, I am so tired, I am feeling left out, at that point stand up and say, but isn't that a choice I decided to make? And what does that do? That empowers us. So I love that word, and I hope lots of us can use that word choice because that's empowerment.
Nice. I want to get back, from this choice that you mentioned. Even somehow we are choosing which words we have to use. Like in terms of choosing which words and what kind of image or what kind of brand we want to give to ourselves. What would it be like for women at work, for men at work? We know that for like women and men in the work spaces, it's all about communications, and how should be the communication between women's and men's and all these things, because it happens a lot. We are talking about woman entrepreneurship. You as a woman entrepreneur and as a person who has had a lot of experience in many corporations, we would love to know how the communication should be.
Yeah, I love that question again. You're great. You're a master at questions. So let's look at it this way. And I think we quickly did some of our like very off the back of the envelope stats, right? So men and women, I sincerely do not think there is any difference between men and women. We are exactly raised in the same society. We have the same type of schooling and same type of nurturing, almost, the same mother who raises the male and the female.
Exactly.
However, there are some distinct societal differences, cultural differences in the way the nurturing of the male and the female goes into it, and in every society, right? Look, I've lived in the West for half my life. I've been raised in the East, and I'm living in the East, and I've lived in some other continents, and I've seen almost all the time the nurturing and the way the males and the females have been nurtured in societies is a little different, even though there is the levels are the same.
Yeah.
So what happens is, what I've noticed, and this is back to my corporate life. So I've had a corporate career for 25 years. I've been in major public companies. Now I'm in a place where I get to see a lot of like SMEs, small business owners and entrepreneurs and big CEOs. And what I notice is that men and women speak a little differently. And the moment you speak a little differently, back again to our earlier point, there's a different visualization by our own selves for what we want, and by our audience, how they look at our words. So women, I have noticed a lot of times when they're trying to make a point, will say, I feel this is the right way of doing things.
Right.
I feel that the goal of having 200 customers, folded it in 3 months, is the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. They've used the word feel. And when a male counterpart may come and say the same thing, he may say, I think this is the right way, or this is the customer base, or I know the market is 78% saturated by so-and-so demographics. So the moment you use the word feel versus Know versus think.
Yeah.
There's a different perception of yourself. So that's kind of like one of our communication capabilities. Another one is that a lot of times I've noticed that women sometimes say something and they ask a question, kind of asking for permission to go on to the next level, or looking at the audience to kind of nod their heads.
Confirm them.
Correct. Confirmation.
Yeah.
Whereas a male audience may just look and say, just give a point and say, right?
Yeah.
You know I'm right, right? So that's a different way of communicating. And I think, is one better than the other? I don't know, but I would just say that the audience you're speaking to has a way of 80% of the audience we are speaking to or pitching to are male. If someone's not happy with the stats, just look at it. Actually, I would say 90% of the investors out there are yet male. So you got to talk to the male audience and, kind of understand how to go get the money out of them. So no, I don't think there's anything right or wrong. Be true to your individual selves. Be authentic, but kind of know how to pitch and who you're pitching to with the words, the communication style.
And communication style. And then somehow your communication style coming from what you want to achieve. I mean, are you achieving something which is perfect? Are you achieving something which you just deliver the work? How is it? I mean, should we be like perfectionism in our workspace?
Yeah.
Or either men are more getting to a perfect, delivering of the work, or woman, how this dynamic also work?
Yeah. So that's a very interesting question to think through.
Yeah.
I would say my first thing is, and I think we talked about this too, experience teaches you a lot of things, especially say you're a 19, 20-year entrepreneur, and I've seen some of the smartest young entrepreneurs actually coming up. I am so impressed by the young talent, which, I go back 20 years and I go, where was I? Why was I so dumb, right? But even without that, experience builds a lot. But in terms of perfection, like a lot of times people want to perfect something because they may be afraid of the backlash, or they may be afraid of it's not right enough. And sometimes, again, between female and male entrepreneurs or startups, what I've noticed is female-run business a lot of times are perfecting their pitches or perfecting their offering or perfecting their concept before it goes into inception phase. However, it's not about perfection. It's about progress. Especially anybody who's run a business knows that timing is very critical. Competition is fierce. Investors have only that much time for the return on investment. So getting some bit of perfection is great, but if your product is 80% perfect, get it out there. If your idea is 60% perfect, get it out there. In our Silicon Valley, we have a term called the minimum viable product, MVP.
Exactly.
It's nothing new. The master crafters have almost known by the time you have it 60% ready, you get it out there in the market, because if the market doesn't want it, what did you use the word? You pivot. You go to the next level of perfection.
Exactly.
But if you had something perfect, it would break everything.
Yeah.
So I think it's the same thing in terms of communication. Don't look for perfection. Look for what's right for you. Look for progress, because if it's not right, learn how to pivot.
Yeah, that's beautiful, because most of the time, as we have been doing like women entrepreneurship with startups, competition, we have done a lot of activities for women entrepreneurs. Most of the time it's happened that, our female friends, they're going through, or they're looking for a kind of perfect features or perfect things that they want to do. But unfortunately, it happens that as they are thinking for the perfect things, but even they lose the MVP, having that MVP, this is the kind of opportunity that they are losing, and completely they don't go for it because they cannot take to a perfect level. They think that it's not enough.
Right.
It's not enough, which would be a kind of worst thing that can happen for entrepreneurs. Because, as you said, that being an entrepreneur is not about being a perfect person. It's a kind of journey, and in that journey, progress is important. Growing by having failures, learning by having failures, learning and growing and so on, which you take to a kind of certain level. Whatever you do, it seems it's perfect because it's all about experience and
That's right.
learning and
That's
so
right.
on.
And also, I'm a product person. By the way, in my background, I've launched numerous products. And even before we had the word intrapreneurship, even though I was in big companies, we were always innovating something new, taking it into a net new market or trying a net new service. So it was all about intrapreneurship. So one of the things I have learned through my experiences is, the classic product life cycle chart where you have the evolution, you have the growth, you have the maturity and the decline. It used to be a 30-year cycle. Guess what? If you get 30 months right now, you're very blessed. You know how quickly services and products come to life and it disappears. So at that point, if you are an entrepreneur, do not look for perfection. If there is a certain style you have, which is to perfect everything, look for something which is quicker. Look for the most minimum viable service, product, communication style. Go to market. If it's not right, nobody remembers you after three days, perhaps.
Yeah.
So there's always time to redo things. So it's all about progress versus perfection, at least for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. As our time is short, we want to go through some other points. That as a woman entrepreneur, what kind of things you think would be much better for women in workspaces, or as an entrepreneur, or as a businesswoman, they can follow in their communications? Like, I remember earlier you mentioned the pleasing part. So and you mentioned pleasers. What do you mean by pleasers?
Yeah.
What is it?
So if I had to write a book, I would actually write a chapter which says pleasers, in quote, please, with an exclamation, saying pleasers, get out of the way. So again, a lot of us in our society are raised to kind of be nurturers, and nurturers usually do like to please. And even the male role versus the female role. And I've seen this numerous times, and even when, as I was growing up through the ranks and as I have staff, my female staff, or even the expectations out of a lot of the female leaders, is to kind of be pleasers. But if you are a pleaser, look, you cannot please everybody, especially if you're making change, if you're making difference with your products, or you're launching new services, or you have a new concept. You're going to be displacing something which is existing.
Yeah.
At that point, even if you're making a lot of money for someone, like I'm talking about entrepreneur, you've displaced someone, so you've made someone unhappy. So at that point, I think that pleasing concept has to take a little bit of the back table, or the back bench, as we call it, because look, when you please someone, people are happy with you. It's a great feeling, but it's just a fleeting moment. So I would just say, please yourself. Be happy with who you are, what you want to do, but that doesn't necessarily mean that be a self-centered person. Be a centered person, I would say. Don't be self-centered, but be centered. And don't worry about pleasing so much.
Because somehow it happens based on experience.
Can I say, please the bottom line, make money. You like that?
Yeah, I love it. I love making money, for sure. Everybody loves it. So for me, it's so interesting to, the Western culture and Eastern culture, they have different criteria and so on. And then for entrepreneurs also, it really affects entrepreneurs' behaviors when they talk with investors as well. Because what we're doing here, we are just trying to channelize everything to entrepreneurs, the startups. Doesn't matter female or male. So how is it? I mean, is it any difference in Eastern culture and Western culture? Because we see that in China, as people are trying to please themselves, by their talking and so on, than being direct or saying no or saying this and that. What do you think about that? Have you seen any difference between Eastern and Western, or like Chinese? For Chinese women entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, my experience in China is a little limited than a lot of other people. We've been here about 3 years, but my first visit to China was in '98 through my big corporations, and obviously I was born in the East too. So of course there is remarkable difference between the way people go to market, the way people communicate, and how especially, though I would have to say there's actually a very common line of connection between the entrepreneurs and the female entrepreneurs. Actually, I've seen there's a lot of connectivity between the East and the West. But in terms of communication style, is that what your question was in terms of communication style?
Because they're afraid of something if they
I think what it happens is, at least what I have noticed in the Eastern society is the fear of failure is a little higher.
Yeah.
The fear of failure is a little higher. Let's not forget it's also very societal, right? It's a very community-based society, and so if one part of the community fails, it could be a failure for the whole community. So there is a little bit of like putting a shelter around the failure. It's not talked of very often and very openly in the Eastern culture. Whereas in the Western culture, it is a little more open, and failures are not completely. Actually, failures could be a badge of honor. Like back in the West Coast, if you've had one or two failed startup, actually you have this badge of honor that you're trying, right?
Yeah.
So I think
it's still the same. Yeah.
That's a great lesson learned. Of course, don't kick your culture, because that is the most important thing you have, and that is the most important thing which can keep you centered. However, don't be afraid to fail, because in life you will fail, and we don't call it failures, we call it pivoting, right?
Pivoting, pivoting. Okay, I mean, the pivoting should not be necessarily failure. Pivoting is because
adapting,
exactly.
Adapting, right?
So, do you have any point about adapting? I mean, adapting in even when we are talking about adapting in a personal level or corporate level or as an entrepreneur, it is all about being open. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a term which I have in my own personal life. I call it adept at being adapting. Right? Adept is someone who's become a master at something.
Yeah.
How do you become adept at adapting? Because, you have to kind of, what we have is, again, East versus West. In the Eastern cultures, there's a lot of confirmation-based culture, that this is how we do things.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Why are you thinking this is how we do things?
Yeah,
but things are changing. It's a global world.
Yeah.
So becoming adept at adapting different things, different cultures, different norms, I think is very core to progress. And again, it's about the progress, right? And it's again to the core word we talked about, integration.
Integration, right? Because all the things that we are talking about, it's all about integration with your life and also your career that you have. So, is there anything else? I mean, I try to just have it by the focus of women entrepreneurs. Is there anything else that from the society, or is there anything else that women entrepreneurs that they can have it as a kind of advantage around themselves that they can bring in the integration of their work and life?
Sure. So one of the other things which I believe is that, and again, it doesn't matter if you have children or don't have children, and I'm talking specifically for women entrepreneurs, women startup specialists, create an ecosystem. Absolutely create an ecosystem around yourself. And as I was talking to someone, they say, ecosystem is not a word we usually use in our private life.
Organizational word.
Yeah, it's a very organizational word. And I, what do you say? I'm a nerd. I'm an organizational nerd. But I do believe in ecosystem. And I think part of the reason, we've moved several times and I've never had family around. And one of the things I've done is never given up my career. I love my career. I love the fact that I can contribute.
Admirable.
And we are truly a dual career family. Both my husband and me have equally demanding jobs.
Nice.
But the most important job we believe is to be parents. So that doesn't take us away, but we hopefully continue to be successful in our careers too. And that's because we believe in creating an ecosystem. And when I say ecosystem, I mean, having a group of friends, having teachers you can count on. We are very lucky. In China, we can have eyes, and, back home too, we had babysitters, or having an outlet, like, say, having a friendship with someone like you who can say, hey, let's talk about your life, and that gives you perspective. So it's an outlet. Yeah. Create an ecosystem, create places which you can bank on and give back. Be an ecosystem to someone too, and create that partnership. I would say that is very, very important as women, especially for women entrepreneurs, because there's no day, there's no night, there's no 8-hour shifts. As an entrepreneur, you're working around the clock, so create that ecosystem. Have a little bit of time to yourself, even if that means 30 minutes. Reflect a little bit. about who you are, how you're growing, because you're growing tremendously as an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
There is no stoppage to your growth. So take a little time for reflection, and also just have humor. Just laugh at your mistakes, because we all make mistakes.
Yeah, so it's interesting talking. Yeah, you talk about ecosystem, which is awesome. That ecosystem can be applied to everybody, even man and woman. But seems for women, I think it's much more important. They have a group of their friends. They have all the elements in that small ecosystem you mentioned. But there is one thing I want to ask, which I'm curious. Do you see any barrier for women entrepreneurs? In work spaces and in workplaces, do you see any barrier? Which those barriers, they're not are barriers for us, I mean, for men.
Yeah. So I see sky's the limit. I see absolutely no barriers. So I come from GE. In GE, we have one term called year-over-year growth. And an investor is going to put money in you if you can show a year-over-year growth rate of double-digit, triple-digit. Just because the women entrepreneurs are so smaller, the growth rate is tremendously high. So I really see sky as the limit. But I think some of the things I must touch upon, of course, China, it's a very, very safe society. But I have been in certain societies where the safety concerns for women are not addressed from a policy level. Mm-hmm. And I think as women, make it a core requirement that, if you are safe and you know the society around you is safe, you can achieve a lot of things. So create a policy or make sure you demand for that. Also, one of the things I believe in is if you can see it, you can be it. So if you look at the Fortune 500 company, just 23 CEOs are women. And I cannot fathom why that should be the case. So demand to become women leaders and demand to see more women leaders out there. Go, and if you're an investor, women, go invest in women-run businesses. So women believe in each other. So I would say that's what I would say. That's
perfect. Yet another thing I want to connect to your explanation. What is the reason that 25 of 500 top Fortune companies are women and another 75% are men? What is the reason?
So this is now.
You might know some reasons.
Right.
For me, it's really important to know what is your.
It's not 25% actually. I think there's 23 women CEOs in Fortune 500 companies.
23.
23. So
which
what
is
does
like
that mean?
5%?
Less than 5%. And they say on boards, 13% of the boards are female, and the rest are male. So there is a little bit more than a little bit of dysfunctionality. But if you look at I think Iceland just made it, though it's a very small country, they made it law that women need to earn as much as men. Mm-hmm. So that's a policy level change which has come about, right?
Yeah.
So there's the grassroots where the grassroots level requires and demands for change, and then the policy has to change accordingly. So I think it's up to all of us. A lot of times I think, again, cultural, societal, women feel that, look, I'm a mother who's going to take care of my baby. If I go away, the baby won't be raised right. So we have to change our norms of perfection too. And, do what you like. If that's what you want to do, absolutely, you must do it. Yes. You must do what you do best. But if there's something you want to do and you're not being allowed to, raise your hand, make noise, go ask for women leaders, go ask for a woman boss.
Nice, that's awesome. So do you see other things that women entrepreneurs or businesswomen, they have to go for it in workspaces or either individually or in corporate level?
I think what women probably have to go, and again, it's become a very open society now, right? We are sitting nearly in 2020, very different now than even 20 years back. But I do think that, you don't see as many role models, and that's a little bit of a concern because, if you want to go somewhere and you don't see someone in that position, perhaps you cannot think of being in that chair. Also, maybe, you have to learn to be adept in communications and communicating with a lot more males because you're surrounded with a lot more males when you go into the field of business or startups, which, say you worked in the field where 90% were women, you would have to kind of become more adept at that. And that type of training is not given to our women workforce and women entrepreneurs right from the start. So I think that is very important for women to kind of feel comfortable and know that, they just have to learn to kind of be around males more and talk like males more and just be more comfortable in those situations.
So, as myself, I grew up in a car industry family. So Yeah, well, my sister, they're working in the car industry, I mean, in companies and so on. So I see how they making their life, their work and so on, and the balance that they have. But again, when I talk to them, it's all about, again, communication. I mean, communication-wise, when we are talking about that, don't you think that there should be a kind of things in society or kind of activities, workshops that men, they understand women, and women, they understand men, and they get familiar, you know, your perspective of a woman's, we are men, we get familiar how you see things, and you got familiar how we see things, and then getting to a kind of common space that we get close to have a kind of similar perspectives or doing things. I think partially it's all about education as well. Education-wise, we've been told, okay, you are a man, you got to do that. Even in the way that we are talking in the school, I mean, doesn't matter in the Western world or in the Eastern world. It's kind of similar. You are a man, come on, you have to get up. It means that women, they have, you know.
Yeah, I do think that
educational things as well.
It's cultural, it's family-based. See, I grew up in a family of girls, and my father was a scientist, he was a physicist, and he always said, you know, home is a phone call away, go get your dreams wherever you are, and don't let anybody judge you for what you can do. So it came right from a very structural level, and not everybody has that, and we were fortunate to have that. But I think it is wrong when people color code their children and say men should wear blue and women should wear pink, or you're a boy, why are you crying? There is nothing wrong in crying. That is sensitivity.
Indirectly, you're saying that, crying for girls.
It's like, you know what, you're a young girl. You should be perfectly dressed. Why are you dirtying your shoes? And so they always say when you talk to your girl, never call her bossy. Because if she is determining something, let her do what she's doing. And when you're talking to, right from the get-go, realize how you're talking to children, because that's the cultural training you're giving them. Yeah. But I do like that. I do like what you're saying, that, you know, it's the way you communicate, how you culture. But I think it has to go right from the get-go. It has to go right from the get-go, how children are being raised, how schools are treating their children, and that's what raises the society to the next level. And I feel very strongly about that. And another thing what I also feel very strongly about, don't look for quotas ever. So what if only 23 women are CEOs? Don't think that, I don't think any of the CEOs can become a CEO because they wish. There's a lot of hard work and desperation. Cannot even imagine the sacrifices, I hate using the word, but the sacrifices the women have to do to get there. Yeah. But I think it's productivity. Do what you do well, keep learning, be adapt, and learn how to embrace change, and continue to produce what you're doing and be efficient at it. So be the best you can be, and then, you know, let things determine where you're going. And if you don't like it, you don't need to be there. Go make your own future. Yeah. In a talk for work-life integration you had, and you mentioned kind of word which was important for me and is interesting, was reflection. What do you mean by reflection? Like as a man, when I hear the reflection, my definition might be different. I want to know, what do you mean by reflection in your life and work career that you have? Yeah. Reflection really actually means exactly what the word means. It's like looking at a mirror and let the mirror look back at you. And does the mirror look at you to the picture you think you have? A lot of times, you know, you look at the mirror and you're like, whoa, that doesn't look like me. So, you know, throughout whatever, a week or a month or a day, whatever you have done, reflection really what I mean, or I would say I do, is I take a little time out. Literally, you know, when you scold a little child, you give them a time out. What do? You make them sit in a corner. Yeah. So to the same aspect, take a little time out, take a little quiet time, and just reflect on, you know, what have I grown? Where have I come? What is the next step I need to do? What should I be doing to help myself? Or is this the right ecosystem I've created around myself? So that's what I mean by reflection. So can you give us an example? Is it something that I have to just be with myself? Or is it for let's say if I have a family, yes, and I'm working, is it reflection?
couldn't be that if I spend time with my family, couldn't be a kind of
and really kudos. It's fantastic. It's a dream. It's a dream, and it is a tough world out there. You know, it's getting tougher because there's so many ways and there's so many things which are coming up, and you know, there's technology which is a common platform, but that's also made things much more easier because you can get your ideas and voices heard. You can create that ecosystem amongst yourself, form collaborations, form partnerships. It's great that a lot of people start doing things on their own, but there's you know, the tech has formed such a great platform that forming those collaborations and partnerships is very key. Belong to groups because groups actually add on. And also, I would say, just go do your thing. Don't be afraid to make mistakes out there and be adept at changing and embracing new things. And ask for help if you must. You're not here alone. There's plenty of people who are like you who may be needing help, and that ecosystem is really going to help you go forward.
Beautiful, awesome. Shilpi Biswas is a great mom, great entrepreneur, and as a vice president.
Fantastic wife.
Fantastic wife. So as a vice president of American Chamber of Commerce, China, Shanghai, really appreciate for your presence and for all the points that you mentioned. And I learned a lot, and for sure, there are a lot of viewers that can use your point and they learn as well.
Thank you. And so, Mars, thank you so much for having me in the show and our wonderful back office techs. And if you haven't come to AmCham Shanghai, visit us soon.
Thank you so much. Awesome.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. It's fun. You're a fun guy with...